Alright, doing a response video to Joe for the second try. First one, the audio got messed up. I can't really use the microphone on the webcam until I cover it or do something with it because it creates a static. I don't know why. Not static, but whatever, that vibration sound.
Alright, Gary, it sounds like you've gone to the websites and you found nothing there, and you got totally bogged down with the history, with a guy who was talking about the history of money and what money is, and we definitely don't need to know anything about that.
Yeah, well, he's being sarcastic. Yeah, but we really don't, though, Joe. It's like going back to figuring out how they, wooden wheels or something. They're not applicable anymore. We don't need to know the science of the wooden wheel. The modern money system is not the archaic money system, and it doesn't have the same liabilities. It doesn't have the same vulnerabilities. It just doesn't. I mean, deed paper is really, it's got integrity now. It's not bullshit paper.
In order to have our opinions about money, okay, and how the money system has come to be corrupted and broken down by the debt money system of fractional reserve banking. None of that means anything.
Yeah, that's right. Well, none of it does mean anything to me because we don't even agree on what money is. So yeah, because it doesn't require a system to have money. Money is just a simple. It's a note. I say it again. It's just an IOU piece of paper. That's all it's supposed to be. That's all it's intended to be. It's a placeholder. It just makes transactions easier. Okay, because it's a wild card for stuff. But that's all. That's it. It doesn't. You don't need a system. All you have to do is keep the number of these limited. And you have to just make sure that it decreases just enough in value every year so people never really have an impulse to hoard it. Never have an impulse to put it away in their mattresses. Okay, that's it. You just have to make it deteriorate just enough to make it disposable enough that people don't want to hold it like a real asset. And that's all. It's just transaction currency.
Anything to Gary, because Gary wants to go snap, and say this is what money is all about, and it's connected to assets. And Gary.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't just wave your hand at the idea that it's connected to assets because that's what makes it valuable, right? An asset comes into the bank, money goes out. It's a very logical and sensible way to give this value. So it can be a house, it can be a car, it can be anything. The assets can be anything that generate this piece of money. But there's assets behind it, so it has real value. It means something because there's an asset in the bank that this represents. It's not just some faith of the government kind of crap. There's real property behind it.
I put out the question to you about government money creation, okay? I said, and why didn't you answer this? Why don't you explain this to me, okay? If inflation is more money than goods, okay, in any given period, creating more money than goods, and if the growth of the money supply...
No, well, you're comparing it to the wrong thing. This doesn't have to... Money isn't goods. It's specific goods. All right? It's not how many goods there are in the universe that decides what this is worth. It's how many goods actually created this. All right? So this should be tied to actual asset values. A bushel of corn or a basket of wheat, or however you say that right. A car, a plane, a train, whatever. This should be tied or related to, not tied, but just there should be a relationship to this that is consistent over time in terms of what it can buy. But like I said, you have to make it depreciate some. Because if you don't make it depreciate some, then its effectiveness as transaction currency is going to be diminished because people will store it like gold or something, and its value will get perverted.
Doesn't match the increase in goods and services. That's inflationary, okay? And if the growth of the money supply fails to match the increase, it's deflationary, okay?
Well, whatever. You're just giving me the rhetoric of the capitalist jackasses. Okay, I'm sorry. What makes inflation is if somebody decides next year to make a whole bunch more of these, then this one will be worth less if there isn't enough population growth to justify it. But it's more about how many people are using this in their daily transactions that determines the value of this. This doesn't mean anything to somebody who's at the top of the economy and dealing with all kinds of other note instruments. They're trading bonds, and they're trading stocks, and they're trading all kinds of other notes, promises of stuff. Okay, they don't even bother with this crap. Okay, and the guys at the bottom, they don't bother with it either. So I mean, you can't measure whole dynamics of an economy and say that that's what money is, because money doesn't work on the whole economy.
So goods and services are the things that we measure in the economy. That's what we use as a basis for targeting money supply growth. That's what the Fed does right now. That's what the private people do right now. So
yeah, well, why should I care what they do now? Like I said, if you're going to use that as a foundation for your argument, it's fail. You're saying the system is broken and corrupt, and yet you're going to use their psychology and their numbers. Fuck that.
Target it, and then they either achieve it or they don't achieve it. Of course they don't achieve it. Of course they don't achieve it because they have a totally broken down money system where part of it is regulated.
Yeah, well, that's not the problem. I mean, the problem is as you know, is they've spent money. They've spent the future. They've spent labor. They haven't performed yet, and so now they're paying an obligation on that, an interest on that, because they've tried to take value they didn't make, they don't own.
Controlled and managed and grown and being tied somewhat to the economy. And then you got the shadow banking side, which ain't tied to anything. Okay, so you got those guys creating money. So the empty money.
Well, again, you say that you got those guys creating money, and that's all you say. You say some empty statement that doesn't mean anything. Okay, there's no hidden printing presses somewhere where they're making more greenbacks. We know how many of these there are. We know how much coinage there is. We know what that is. All right, what they do with stock certificates, well, that has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with the federal government. It's none of its fucking business. And they certainly shouldn't be bailing it out or buying any of that crap paper, that bullshit money.
So I'm asking you to make some rationale here for me, okay? To make some rationale here for me about government versus non-government money creation.
Yeah, well, whatever. Government versus non-government money creation. Again, you keep talking about creation of money. This is not created. Stuff creates this. An asset goes in and this comes out. So what's the complexity here? What's so complicated about how this is created? I just don't get it.
That's what I'm asking you to do. And instead of that, you just keep, giving me this,
Yeah, well, again, you can keep pleading, okay? I'm not getting your argument either. I'm not hearing you say anything of substance. You say they've printed $1 zillion. Well, where's your evidence that they've printed $1 zillion? They haven't done that. Where's your evidence that every single bit of federal, the Fed money that they give to the banks to extend their capacity to loan money, how any of that isn't been collateralized? Because it fucking has. And the fact that the economy is bubbled is a symptom of the fact that properties have been bought not to be consumed, but to be owned as investments. All right, and that was the inflation created. There was an expectation even by the common man that his home would increase in value, that he would get wealthier, that he didn't have to do any work, that his house was going to do the work. And it was a bullshit expectation.
The economy is $10 trillion. It's going to grow next year by $200 billion.
Well, again, you say, whose numbers are these? The economy is $10 trillion. It's going to grow by $2 trillion. Bullshit. They're all bullshit numbers. Goddamn economy. Take out the $13 trillion in deficit spending. Okay, that's future. That's not today's economy. That's counting an economy that hasn't been produced yet. So take out that $13 trillion. Take out the $300 billion a year that is financing that $13 trillion, because that's not real fucking money either. That's not a real economy either. All right, it's bullshit. So let's talk with real numbers, not these fake, artificially preposterous stimulus numbers. I mean, you're talking like somebody could have a credit card and they could spend $50,000 and say, "Look how rich I am," and we know he's not really rich because it's not real; it's debt.
You pull out 3, 4, 500, 600, 700 billion, which is what the investment bankers are creating. I never said anything about that.
Yeah, well, they're not creating that. They're creating a stock certificate that says on it, this is worth that much money. This is how much you paid for the stock. It'll tell you what you paid for it. What it's actually worth, that's what the real game is, because it's not worth a goddamn thing, and you know it. The average stock isn't, if you liquidated the company, all of its assets, all of its value, okay, you're talking about a penny on the dollar. That's what that fucking note is worth, that piece of paper. It's a fake piece of economy. It's not real economy.